Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. We are really excited that you have taken time out of your day to be a part of us. We are featuring individuals from minority population that have participated in clinical trials before. We're going to highlight disparities, challenges, and barriers to clinical research participation among Hispanic community, African American community, as well as the LGBTQ community. Thank you for joining us today. I am very sure that you are going to be really inspired and empowered with education and knowledge about clinical trial participation. And we hope that you continue to engage with us. I also want to say a big thank you to the funders of our program and also to everyone that has sponsored this event. Our event would not have been this successful without each of you. Thank you for your support. Thank you to our sponsors and our volunteers, and most importantly, to each and every one of you, our community members. We thank you for joining us, and please stay tuned as we begin today's conference. Thank you.
I remember this young lady, she had just gotten vaccinated. She's African American, and she goes home and she talks to her grandmother. Grandma, you need to be vaccinated. Grandma says, absolutely not. I don't trust the healthcare system. I don't trust any of these people. I'm not going to get vaccinated. The young lady says, well, Mom, the lady who vaccinated me is African American. She says, well, in that case, take me, I want to get vaccinated. The message is important, but so is the messenger.
Data and science and study have shown that African American individuals are much less likely to be enrolled into a clinical trial. So the EQB Med initiative is going to address this major and critical problem in our community.
EQB Med initiative positions us at Texas Southern University to actually have access to innovative and breakthrough clinical studies. We do a lot of work to increase awareness about clinical research participation, but without an opportunity to actually open access for individuals to participate and to build trust in clinical trial process, we are very limited.
Pharmacy is a very important team in communication with the community. And we are not only have a PharmD program, we also have a PhD program. With that, we have more outreach to the community.
We are the #1 producers of African American pharmacists in the state of Texas. Pharmacists are a significant part of the healthcare team. They're able to immunize patients. They're able to help them in a variety of health settings per se.
TSU had the RCMI support back in 1980s, especially in terms of research infrastructure. So the students and scientists can conduct most cutting edge research, especially in the area of drug discovery and development.
In 2024, the College of Pharmacy and Health Sciences celebrated its existence of over 70 years. We lead a lot of initiatives advancing health equity, training community health workers, providing continuing education for community health workers, as well as for our pharmacy and health administration students.
In this initiative, we are going to partner with UTMB, Yale University, and Morehouse School of Medicine. We will be able to gain more experience and resources and guidance on how to recruit for clinical trial and how to conduct clinical trials.
So this clinical research initiative under the EQB Med funding mechanism allows us not just to provide opportunities for clinical trial participation for community members, but it creates a platform for us to train the next generation of pharmacists that will be culturally competent, that will have an high level of awareness of engaging with community members to promote the concept of diversity and equal representation in clinical research participation.
Hey, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming in today and joining this conversation after a full day of learning about clinical trial, you probably have a lot of questions and things that you're thinking and you're trying to digest it a little bit. So at this time, we are so grateful that we are supported by the EQB Med to help us to have an hour of kind of like a conversation, to have a dialogue, and to talk about clinical trial or clinical research in general. So today we're going to have several panelists who will come up in a few minutes. Dr. Ajwale will introduce them, and then we will have a opened questions and answer session. So the program is going to be about an hour. And before we move on, I want to emphasize the goal of the conversation today. We want to increase the awareness of clinical research, and we also want to hear from community members because you are the expert in the community. So we want to practice a lot of listening skill and also to speak up if you have a question. Everyone's voices is important. It doesn't matter what we do, so we are all equal. We all have the same weight in our voice. So don't get intimidate. And if you have a question, please go ahead and ask. And we're going to have the time, I think it's 15 minutes for you to ask any questions that you might have. So without further delay, I'll let Dr. Ajwale to come introduce the panelists.
Thanks. Yeah, nice to see everybody. I'm as the Chief Research Officer at UTMB. My responsibility is to oversee all of research at UTMB. And of course, a big part of research at UTMB is clinical research. And there we have a structure at UTMB called the Office of Clinical Research. And that group reports up to me. And they are a group of folks who also know how to look at the finances around clinical research and also to negotiate contracts with the pharmaceutical companies that we're trying to do an industry trial. So that is a great organization that allows us to move the engine forward. We also have another organization, research coordinators, that we work through that office. And so they work with our investigators who want to do a clinical trial. They're skilled in clinical trials, and they'll work with them to help them do their clinical trial. And all of that infrastructure is really driven by the CTSA, which is the Clinical Translational Science Award that we have at UTMB. It's sponsored by NIH, and it's an award that directs us to do translational science. So the goal of that is to take discoveries in medicine and move them, the standard term is from bench to bedside.
But really, I think we need to change that term. We need to change it really from bench to community. Right. And we need to turn it around the other way from community to bench, right? So
That's
it really,
good. So good and real.
oh, there you are. I was looking for you over here. How'd you get over there? Quick.
I sneak behind you.
Did you go poof or what? I mean, that was pretty cool. So that really, I think, is what we're all about, and that's how we, as part of our CTSA, we are reaching out to universities here in the Houston-Galveston region, and one of our great partners has been TSU. We also are partnering with Houston Methodist and University of Houston Clear Lake. So why do I do clinical research? First of all, it's a privilege. It really is a privilege to be able to change the lives of your patients in a significant way. You can't really put a price on it or define it. You know, I always think about that. I know I watch too much TV, but I always think about that, the credit card commercial, right? Where so much for this, so much for that, but whatever it was, priceless, right? So that's kind of how I feel. But just to give you an example of what clinical research can do, in the work that I've been doing with my research team over the last 20 years, we've been able to describe a condition that causes patients to have profound fatigue and foggy brains. And it becomes so severe that these folks can't do their jobs anymore. You know, they can't function. And it gets to the point where they lose their jobs, their families are upset, and they go from doctor to doctor to doctor, and they're told, well, take some stimulant or take some antidepressant, or you're depressed, or, you know, you're neurotic, or, you know, and so they're very, you know, just very, their lives are miserable. And we've been able to figure out what the cause of that is. And we've been able to determine a treatment for that, so that now the patients come to me and I can start them on a treatment. And I don't get them back to perfect, but I get them pretty close. So every day that I go in my clinic, I get to have patients come tell me, Dr. Urban, you changed my life. And, you know, it's this really strange, it's these really just amazing things. Like one girl that we started treating who was at home in bed in the dark. And when she graduated from college, after we started the treatment, her mom sent me a text of her getting her degree, right? So you can't really, I mean, you just go, wow, this is just such a privilege. And I think it's being able to, that's what drives us. That's why clinical research is so important. There's so many things we don't know about the human body, and there's so many things of people who are suffering for which we don't know why. And they suffer and get put aside. They get shuffled aside. And that's what clinical research is all about, is how do we listen to those people? How do we find out what that problem is? And how do we make them better? So that's really what clinical research for me is all about.
That is awesome. Thank you, Dr. Alban, for sharing that insight and, you know, telling us the story of the impact, right? I think that is really the motivation, the fact that we can make a significant impact in patients' life and get to see and be a part of that, life-changing therapy is a testament in itself. That's awesome. I would ask Dr. Ofili the same question. Dr. Ofili, can you tell us in what capacity you are involved in clinical trials and what motivates you to be a part of clinical trials?
Okay, I'll try not to be as long as Dr. Urban, but you just set the bar really high.
That's why I went first.
Got it. No. So quite frankly, I think probably some of the same motivations, but I'll start with sort of my engagement with Morehouse. So I'm at Morehouse School of Medicine, as you all know. And as a historically Black institution, Morehouse has a specific mission similar to TSU around health equity. And when I first got to Morehouse, you know, I came in as chief of cardiology and was trying to grow the cardiology program. But we all know that, you know, and I have full respect for cancer and all the ravages of cancer, but cardiovascular disease remains the leading cause of death for everyone, including Blacks, women, and men. And it just came home to me when I first came to Grady Hospital, which is our main hospital. I had just finished my training at WashU and walked in the wards, and everybody I saw was young, and they were barely 40 years old, or maybe at most 50, early 50s. And they were in the hospital with congestive heart failure, with poorly controlled hypertension, all of the things that I saw at WashU that was only about older people, people in their 70s and 80s and sometimes even 90s. And so I was really puzzled because we were just told hypertension was not an issue in people who are under the age of 40. And I saw something totally different at Grady. So I asked my colleague, there's a woman who's known by everyone, Dr. Nina Wenger. She's like known as the queen of cardiovascular. She's been at Grady forever. And I said, why do we have so many young people in the hospital? And she goes, it's high blood pressure. I said, what do you mean high blood pressure? She goes, well, that's the thing, I'm telling you. And I said, well, I don't believe you. So I ran a study and looked at people and found that she was absolutely correct. 2/3 of individuals that we looked at had uncontrolled hypertension. They were more likely to have congestive heart failure, be hospitalized multiple times. So I said, okay, well, that's it then. We're just going to have to study this. But we didn't ask too many good questions like you're asking, Dr. Ajewale. We thought, oh, yeah, that's what we need to do. But, down the road, we wish we had asked some of the questions you're asking, because what we learned was, yes, it is high blood pressure. But now we know it's more than just high blood pressure. It's about all the things we're talking about, the social determinants. People don't have access to treatment. It's not that they want to have high blood pressure. They're stressed out. There's racism. There's all the stresses at work that our communities face. So there's that broad issue of health inequity. But I worked my way up to that to understand that. Because in the beginning, it was that clinical translational piece. You're sort of in that space. You're making discoveries. But then you recognize that if it doesn't spread to a lot of other people to benefit the community, it doesn't matter. And so this is where I'm at now. So I have served as Senior Associate Dean for Clinical Research at some point. And so I was able to sort of understand what are all the sort of almost like the scientific issues that matter. But now, as leading some of the RCMI consortium with institutions like TSU, it's very clear to me that the way you make change is by hooking into the passion within each institution, the commitment for each institution to get to that goal that they've set. And so this is what drives me, because as I come, when we came to TSU, it was just amazing. We saw leaders that had this, you just listen to Dr. Olale, and I'm thinking, okay, this woman's going to be a politician one day. Give her a hand clap. Give her a hand clap. I said, well, we're getting tired of hand claps. No, but she give a hand clap for everybody, and everybody is with her. She's raising millions of dollars. I said, okay, that makes sense. But as she said, there's still some issue, and that's happening regardless of what RCMI institution I look at, and that is the severe inequity. You come to TSU, you see people who are passionate. You attract all the students, but your infrastructure is not there. You have less resources to do 10 times the work that other institutions are doing. And it's not just TSU. It's FAMU, it's Meharry, it's Morris. I know among HBCUs, they look at someone and go, well, you got everything you need. No, until you have an endowment like Harvard and Yale, you're not. I'm just serious. This is where I'm at now. We have got to get resources to the institutions that connect directly to the communities. And yes, what you're doing, get the resources to the community, because they know what they need to do. When we did a project at Big Bethel AME Church, it was on diabetes. We were successful with diabetes. And then we gave them a grant. It wasn't a huge amount of money. It might have been $35,000, but it was a lot for Big Bethel. And they say, you know what we're going to do? We want to do cancer. Well, that's what they want to do. That's what they see as their disparity, and they should be able to do that. So to me, at this stage where I'm at, it's about workforce. It's about getting the right resources to the people who care about the problem. Don't get it to people who just want to do it because it's the thing to do now. Because tomorrow, when it's not the thing to do, they're gone. And I'm so delighted that you have a partner like UTMB, because when I came to that table, I told someone earlier and they said, I should stop talking. She just looked at her watch.
No. Sorry. I apologize. I just got a call and I silenced it. I'm so sorry. Dr. Philly, please keep going.
Okay, because I was gonna say something amazing about you, but okay, good. But this is really the truth, because when you're trying to, there's nobody who has all the answers to innovation. The biggest answer to innovation is get people who are passionate about something they want to do. When I reached out to the RCMI, well, doctor, yeah, I give her a doctorate because she does this. She's a doctor. So Tisha Johnson, she's an MBA, which in my books, lawyers and business people own the country anyway. I have a lawyer in the house. So, but we got the EQB Med program started, and she was going around and telling industry about RCMI. I wasn't in the rooms that she was in. Whether we like it or not, when Yale's at the table, it's a different conversation. But she was able to uplift what's happening within RCMI, and that's how we were invited to the table. But once we got there, I told her, I said, we got to focus on these institutions who are not doing clinical trials at all. Because they have, I told her, I said, I saw something from TSU, huge community outreach. And so when we reached out, but I have to be fair, as RCMI leader, I have to send to everybody. So I sent to all of our pharmacy schools. There's about 5 of them. Guess who sent me all the information I needed right away? Well, yeah, Dr. Acho. They sent everything, talked about their partnership with UTMB, and it was clear to me that this group not only have the passion, but they're putting the work to it to get it done. And for us, when we came for the visit, it was the same manifestation. But I will just close out by saying, Dr. Ajewale, that, yeah, you do bug me. If I say, once I tell Dr. Ajewale I'm going to do something, it's like every week I get an email reminding me.
Reminder.
When does this woman sleep? And then I found out she has, 4 children too?
4 kids, including a 2-year-old.
So you get it. So she's efficient, but I would say that at the end of the day, we can talk all we want. Unless the resource math changes, we're not going to make the impact we're going to make. So I am happy that there's a partnership, but I'm going to be a lot happier when I see those millions coming toward TSU and the goals that you've set for yourselves. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dr. Ofili. That is amazing. And before I ask Tisha the same question, I just want to address the audience, both in-house and online, to remind us that the title of this session is very purposeful. We titled it Beyond Tuskegee, right? Because we are really trying to say, how do we move forward? You understand? I mean, you can see the passion here, right? You can see that the speakers, we are very intentional and purposeful, but we can't do it alone. We need the community. So please keep thinking, keep, analyzing, and let us know the questions that you have so that as we are designing these studies, Dr. Opan said it, it should no longer be benchtop to bedside. It should be benchtop to community, and actually community back to the benchtop. But this conversation is just a Kickstarter to what the future holds. So I just want to drop that there. And then Tisha, I'm going to ask you the same question. Can you please let us know what capacity you are involved in clinical trials and what motivates you?
So that's pretty easy, Dr. Ofili. And it's been really incredible. I heard the speakers earlier talking about clinical research and what it means and how they got involved. And I'm a small town girl. I grew up on a farm. I had no idea that clinical research existed. We did go to the doctor, we'd go to the pediatrician. So I wasn't quite like the speaker from earlier, but there are so many things that we didn't know and that, we didn't understand as a family. And when I left home and started my career, I got to see all of the inequities in healthcare. And I got to really understand just how frightening it all is. And I think that one of the things that sort of keeps me going is that idea of community. One of the things I'm proudest of in my community, in my career, other than like the EQB Med and the work that we're doing now, is the work that we get to do at home in Connecticut. Dr. Ojawali mentioned the partnership that we have with the AME Zion Churches in Connecticut and Junta for Progressive Action, which is a community-based organization. And they really do drive the agenda. So we meet with our community partners and they say, these are the 5 things we're going to work on this year. And guess what we do? We're working on those 5 things because they know exactly what's important to the community. They know the main issues in the community. It was interesting when we first started this partnership, the leadership at Yale said, they're not doctors, they're reverends, they're, leaders of community-based organizations and community leaders. How do they actually know that these are the 5 top issues? At the time, it was 14, so they had a bigger workload in the beginning. They really made us work hard. But what we did was to validate that, we actually looked at the total number of reasons that individuals in the community around the institution were visiting the ER. And literally, the top 20 reasons that people showed up in the ER mapped to the top 14 health concerns that the community leaders had. So it was validating for the leadership. We said, they know their community. They get better answers to the questions that are being asked in the clinic than some of the doctors do because they have the trust. And so if we really want to make a difference, we need to just get out of the way and listen to the community and what they have to say. And so when we started that process as an institution, we really were terrible in terms of making our clinical trials accessible, equitable, and from an organizational perspective, we had about 2% of our total participation in clinical trials identifying as a person of color. Now, across our institution, not only have we grown our research, 14-fold now, but about 35% of the total participation in all of our clinical trials identify as a person of color. In our community, it's Black and Hispanic are the 2 largest populations of color. But where the studies are that go straight to the community, to these advisors, we call them the cultural ambassadors for clinical research, which is the name they came up with, and they and they help us to maximize and to not only just decide the diseases that they're working on, but they meet with the investigators while they're designing their studies. They meet with them to talk about recruitment strategies, and then they design and do what they think is the right way to message in the community, to meet people where they are in their journey about clinical trials participation in those studies. 60%, sometimes 90% of the people who enroll in those clinical trials are Black, Hispanic, or a person who identifies as a person of color, and it means something. I got emotional when Dr. Ofili spoke earlier. My younger brother died at 46. We didn't know that as a family we have LP(a) as a cardiovascular risk factor. And it shook us to the core. It still does. I still get emotional when she talks about it. And so knowing that we can, as a community, get the answers to the diseases that are disproportionately impacting our population every day, that with knowledge, we can change our health care, we can change health factors. It drives me every day. I want to be better every day. I want to do things every day that make life better. And when we came to TSU, I said, first of all, they gave me grits. So that was like, I felt like home.
So much.
I appreciate you so much for the grits, because in Connecticut, they put stuff in the grits. And grits are not supposed to have all of the stuff on them, just butter, very specific about Southern grits. But seriously, it was just incredible. You walked away with this feeling like these people, these women, these physicians, these pharmacists, they are going to change the world. And you still feel it every day. I felt it all day today here. It's just such an honor to be here with all of you and hear all of your stories. And I can't wait to see what we do next together.
That is awesome. Thank you very much, Tisha. Even though I do have a few other questions, I want to open it up to the community to see if any of the community members, either online or in person, any questions online? No? Any in-person community member have a question for the panel? Okay, yes, please. Because we have online audience, they won't be able to. Thank you so much.
Ms. Johnson, same for me. I grew up on a farm as well. I wasn't quite familiar with clinical research, but I knew I wanted to be something in biology. My biology teacher had she really pushed it for us. So thank you so much. So my question is, for someone that grew up in Alabama, how do I push clinical research onto my community or assist them in knowing that they're not just guinea pigs in this area?
Yeah, it's so incredible. I'm going to share really briefly the story of how we ended up with the Cultural Ambassadors Program when we started to look at this issue of total recruitment in our clinical trials. Like, why are people not signing up for clinical trials? There's the flyer down the street and blah, blah, blah. But people aren't signing up. And so we decided to do some focus groups. And so when we did the focus groups, we wanted to look like the patients at Yale. And so we had half individuals who identified as minority, half white, half women, half men, across educational boundaries, across economic boundaries. And I was very pregnant at the time with my 15-year-old, but I was behind the glass, like, Law and Order, where the people are on the other side of the glass, and I could hear everything, but they didn't know they were answering the questions for Yale. And so in the sessions, these small focus groups, everyone said, they were asked questions like, how do you think about healthcare? Would you consider participating in clinical trials? So literally, I heard 250 people who were Black or Hispanic say, no way, even if I had cancer and someone told me this trial potentially could be life extending, they said no. And it hurt. I'd spent much of my career in clinical research, and that really hurt. And then, so we decided to have more conversations, but just Black and Hispanic continue. So we had 100 Black, 100 Hispanic. So 200 more people who identify as a person of color said, even if they were told that a study could extend their life with cancer, they said no. So we said, how do we change it? And what we heard was, in the Black community, church won't be perfect. Not everybody goes to church. Some Sundays I don't make it either, but people in the community generally trust that ministers are doing the right thing. And then we also heard community-based organizations, because this is where I go when I need food assistance, or if I need assistance with my heating. I go to these places and I trust these people. I trust them more than my doctors. So they said, if you can get these people to trust you in the church and these organizations, then maybe we'll trust Yale. So I called, I thought I had an in. I'm very pregnant. I called my uncle, who was the presiding elder, and I said, Uncle Tim, I need a favor. He said, oh, anything for you, Niecy? Anything for you, girl? I said, I need help with clinical trial. He's like, no way. I ain't being no guinea pig for Yale. That was like, so we talked on the way home, and he said, you know what I'm going to do? I can't guarantee you anything, but I'm going to get 5 of the ministers that I think at least will hear you out. I'll bring them to a meeting, and you can invite these other organizations, and you're going to have to convince them. And so what I did was I talked to them about all of the health disparities. I talked about prostate cancer. I talked about heart disease. I talked about diabetes. I talked about how, depending on the zip code you live in, you could die 10 years sooner than somebody that lives in a similar zip code. And I said, but clinical trials, it's a way for us to at least understand and influence drug development, to figure out what's coming next, to get some of these answers. And they believed it. And so we started this journey together, saying, okay, how do we change the minds of community? And so we have things now like workforce development programs for high school kids. We take kids from all around the country. It's still open, so I'll give the link. It's a remote opportunity for 15-year-olds. And part of what we do is meet the leader. So they talk to people like Dr. O'Feely. She has lunch with them virtually for an hour. And we say, look, these are careers that you can have. This is what science is. And then we help them by writing letters of recommendation when they go to college. We're in year 3 now. We have 4 kids at Yale, 1 at Stanford. Really proud of the work that we're doing. But it's this idea that we're working directly with community leaders and people who know how to reach. Because it's one thing to have a message, but if someone's not willing to hear the message or if it's not written in a way to reach them where they are, it's not speaking to their culture, it's not speaking to who they are in rural America, it's never going to get there. And so we have to modify the message to speak to the people who it matters most. And so we're really excited. Another one of our sites in EQB Med is in South Carolina. That's my home. So I already started talking to all the people on the farm, say, look, we're going to be talking about clinical research, so get ready. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Real quick,
Yes,
because you cornered me earlier about Alabama State maybe as a potential opportunity. So there's an RCMI institution, as we said, at Tuskegee. But at the same time, I think I would connect with what Dr. Ajoale is doing here, because you're here in Houston. What we're trying to do with EQB Med is really, TSU is essentially like a model. And use that to say, if we have an HBCU that's not necessarily a medical school, for example, but they have a community around them, how can we build on that to engage clinical research? And it's all the things that Tisha just shared, but I think it has to start from somewhere, right? So it might be that nugget of seeing what is Tuskegee doing with their community engagement. Is there an opportunity with Alabama State? Again, I'm saying this not even knowing who the players are at those institutions, but generally just takes one person who's interested, connecting with another person who's interested, and you're going to be like that catalyst to mix it up and make it happen. So next year, we want to hear that. How about that? I've just turned that around on you.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon. I have a statement and a question. I live in the community, but I'm also a sergeant with the Houston Police Department, and I work in community services. And so we have the same thing, because what we try to do is build trust with the community, because we all know that there is no trust almost for some cultures, and mine in particular. And so building that trust, we have to have events where we're talking to people and we're getting to know them. And for me, going to the doctor, I'd had a conversation with someone and I said, why can't they keep the money that I don't use from year to year to year because I don't go? And then so I kind of have to go now, in a sense, because when you get a certain age, you need to do certain tests to make sure that you're not sick. And it's like, okay. And I'll tell you a story. I'm 45. They want us to start having our mammograms, right, at 40. Piss poor doctors. That's all I got to say and it's like, I don't want to go to this one. I want to go to someone that looks like me, that understands what can happen to me. And at 41, when I first had my first mammogram, I asked them what I needed to do, did everything, went, and then it was like, oh, you need to come back. And it's not just the clinical research part, it's not just the healthcare part, it's the insurance. So you have a lot of things that are pushing people away, because then you tell me to come back, and this is supposed to be preventative care, right? So it should be covered. And you tell me I need to give you $400. And I'm like, for what? Why didn't you look at everything when I came the first time? And this is not something that I requested. This is something that the doctors requested. And then here we go, another piece. It's the medical coding. If they code it correctly, then I don't have to pay. And so you have all of these things that are pushing people away from even going to the doctor. And so then I had another one. And so I called the insurance company before I went. I said, which test can I take so that I don't have to go back? Scheduled them. They said you can have every which way to look at it. The doctor that I don't know, that I've never met, canceled my appointment for one of the tests. Yes, you see how your eyes are? I waited an hour to ask the doctor, why did she do that? She never came out. So you understand, it's the trust factor. So how do you build that trust with people? What are you going to do? Because, you can go, like you said, I go to church. We work in the community. I live and work in the same community, every day. I'm up here at Texas Southern with some of our young people. We are at the community centers. We work with the seniors. They see us. And I'm not going to break my arm, pat myself on the back, but they know me. They know Officer McCoy because we're always in the community doing trust building events. But what are you going to do with those doctors? Because you have people that are in your field that are playing against you like we do. We have them as well. But what do we do to kind of get those people to stop doing that? Because they're hurting what we're trying to do.
Yeah. So I just want to take a quick stab, and then I think others want to comment. So I think this is really, in a nutshell, about cultural competence in delivering care. And and it didn't used to be taught in medical school. People could not take care of people across cultures. Now they're improving some, but it's still a problem. Because like you say, sometimes when patients come in and they see someone who looks like them, they are more likely to open up on something, or even gender alignment. And there's data now that shows it does make a difference with outcomes. However, we know that the number of physicians who are African Americans or Blacks is very small. And the more specialized you get, the smaller that number gets. So cardiologists are very rare. Black cardiologists, we have one here in the audience. I want to acknowledge Dr. Raymond Little, who's here in Humble, Texas, in the house. But, there's not enough to go around. So in medical schools now, there's now an emphasis on education about not only just teaching it theoretically, but actually modeling it, having people do scenarios and get graded to say, did you communicate in a culturally respectful manner? But there are headwinds, and we all know that Texas is leading the way with these headwinds against things that we thought was appropriate to help people get to a certain level so we're more equitable in delivering care. But I have to say, everybody in this room understands that we cannot just go away because of those headways. We have to keep getting the information, just like Tisha shared, just like the TSU teams are sharing, and communicate that outright in publications. Because these people are coming in and trying to say, what you're doing is wrong. And we know that's not correct. But the only way we answer that is with data. So I want to say to you, don't be discouraged, but you did the right thing. You basically, I don't even have to tell you. You advocated for yourself. You said, I'm going to do one better. You have to tell me why I have to do this and this and that. And that's what we have to keep communicating to people. And I think at the end of the day, this will win out. It might take us a while, but there's no way you can get in the way of people who know what's good for them and are seeking what's rightfully appropriate for them. So I just want to say, please keep it up, and we're here to support.
I couldn't agree more. And, the education and the training, it is changing. It's too slow, but it is changing. And, a couple of things that we're doing, I think that trying to help with that is our community leaders actually now provide a lot of the training for the residents and students and our doctors. So sharing stories like this, literally saying, like, these are the things we're concerned about as community leaders. We want you to pay attention to them. We want to help educate that next generation of student and residents and trainees so that they're better. The other thing that I'm really excited about, that the community groups that we're working with, and we actually are partnered with some of them in EQB Med, and they're going to join the partnership soon. But we're training the community themselves to carry the message, to be advocates, to be navigators, to say, here's how you navigate the insurance landscape. And in many of the churches and the organizations, they have healthcare ministries, they have a healthcare division. So we're giving them the knowledge to say, how do you think about, like the story we heard earlier about the medications? Well, most of the pharmaceutical companies have programs that help pay for medications. If there are issues with access and the issues of coding, like you mentioned, how can you work with a navigator in advance And so sharing that knowledge to say, look, the more we educate ourselves as healthcare consumers, the more we're going to be able to advocate for us in our community and get what we need to do to have equitable access across the board to healthcare. It's not a perfect answer, but I think that that's really, when you think about how we start to change things, it is with knowledge. It's knowing that you can make those requests. It's knowing that you have access to certain things with an insurance company.
Yeah,
Sure.
You can have my mic.
Thank you.
This is Dr. Little. He owns a surgery center in Humble, Texas, and I'm just going to let you know, when I got to his office, he and his wife, power couple, doing great work. Please check him out.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I wanted to make a small point. One of the things that is going to push change, the change that you desire, is that when you control your own data, then the health system has to adjust to you. So just know that the day of your data empowerment is coming. And then the healthcare system, the doctors have to say, listen, I'm going to listen a little bit more closely to what her need is and what she wants. And that's one way we'll make the health system more equitable. Just wanted to mention that. It's coming.
Thank you for that. Data, patient empowerment and how data is being shared. I see your hand, and I know there is a question online, maybe a couple more, but I want to get Dr. Alban's take on training opportunities for cultural competency, with UTMB and the large resources that is available, right? Especially for us at TSU, as we are learning to be clinical trial, proficient, in this process. Are there any pre-existing trainings that maybe we could also leverage from UTMB side?
There are many different opportunities within our medical student training now. I'll talk to you guys to really increase that awareness. And the medical school classes have themselves changed dramatically in the last, 20 years. So I think we're seeing the diversity. It really happened first with women. That was the first change. And now we're seeing with the culturally diverse. And it's, so for our system, it takes time. It takes time for those folks who are training in medical school. It's a long road. It's 4 years to medical school. And then if you specialize, if you like going to be a general internist, it's 3 years. If you're going to be a family practice doctor, it's 4 years. If you're going to be an OB-GYN doctor, it's 5 years. So these changes that we want to make are going to take time. And so the change with more women in medical school really happened about 15 years ago, I'd say, or maybe 20 years ago. What do you guys think? And now we're seeing those leadership positions happen. So as that happens, as we get people of color and we get more diversity in our leadership, that's how these programs are developing. And so there are programs. I can't give you any of them specifically. I'm not aware of exactly what they are, but there are multiple student groups within the medical school, and not just the medical school, but the nursing school, occupational therapy school, all of our schools. That's a key component.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dr. Alban. Jordan, I will go to you, and I know Ms. Upshaw, you had a question too. Jordan.
I'm ready.
Oh.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we're good. Okay, so my question, just coming from my personal experience, in hearing some of the conversations that's been happening just throughout the day, I had to ask myself, well, when was I introduced to the concept of clinical trials? When did that impression? When was the impression first made? And had I not been on a medical track, when would I have had that conversation? So I guess my question is more so around when are we like observing these initial interactions with clinical research, and what is that experience like? Because I remember me being 16 years old at Texas Children's in a hospital bed. My mom is a nurse, so she I had an advocate, but I also had someone that can bridge that gap of health literacy for me in that way. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. But I know that everyone does not have that same advocate in their corner, right? So I guess it's more so like a point of maybe a point of focus of trying to figure out where that initial impression of clinical trials happens, how can we establish um, this prominence and impression before the negative perceptions of losing agency because you enrolled within a clinical trial, and those other negative perceptions start to sprout and become a behavior that we have to combat.
So Tisha and I participate with the national academies, and she probably going to have a comment around this. The big focus now is go to where people see their doctors. It's one thing, I mean, big institutions, MD Anderson, the big academic centers, they have a huge role because that's where a lot of the specialization is. But most people first get that initial should get that initial conversation with their own primary care doctor. And so there's now a lot of effort. In fact, the new NIH director, for those of you who don't know, NIH is government. This is our government. That's who puts money into research and health. There's now a big focus on saying we want to have engagement of doctors who are out in the community. Dr. Little is a specialist, but he's a cardiologist, but he's also out in the community. His knowledge about clinical research means he's going to have a conversation with the patient. A lot of doctors don't know, and so they get suspicious about, well, I don't want to, first of all, practical. I don't want to spend the time. I got 10 minutes or 5 minutes with my patient. There's not enough time. So there's some of that need to change. There are actual bills in Congress right now talking about how do we reimburse doctors at the community level for just talking to patients about clinical trials. These things have to change for us to see the kind of health literacy, but also obviously the community engagement, what we're talking about here, and empowering. So I don't want to.
No, I was just going to say, in addition to what Dr. Ovili just mentioned with trying to get closer to the community with sites like TSU and primary care, one of the things that we're trying to do with our community engaged program at Yale is help kids know that clinical research is a field option. They could do this for a living at all different levels, regardless to educational level. There are roles within clinical research. And so we started a program where we're introducing to elementary kids and their parents. And so we're working on they're working on a coloring book, and other kinds of things to say, hey, clinical research isn't this big, bad, scary thing. They're these kinds of trying to make it fun. And so we've got a group of kids that are helping us. Like our high school interns are actually recommending the text. They had a focus group with the younger siblings to come up with some of the ideas to reach the younger kids. So we're quite excited about it. But literally our community leaders said, let's get the kids in kindergarten and start talking to them about what it is to take charge of their own health, to think about career options that they wouldn't have otherwise known. And so they just can't say the earlier, next thing they're going to be dragging us to, nursery schools or something. But that's where they're starting now. So it's pretty cool.
Absolutely. K through 12, right? That's where it begins. That's awesome. Thank you. Yes, Sajid.
Okay, number one, I want to say thank you. First of all, when we were invited to this, I told her that I was excited about it because what you guys are talking about is very important. At 23, I was diagnosed with a pseudotumor. It's called pseudotumor cerebri. And then at 30, I was diagnosed with hydrocephalus. And actually, when we came in, I went to the restroom and she texted me and said, "Are you okay?" And that's usually because if I go to the restroom for a long period of time, most people are like, "Is she okay in there?" Meaning because I may have passed out. I lost my sense of smell in 2019 from the hydrocephalus because I have the vasovagal syncope. And me and her have this conversation often about the fact that every time I go to the doctor, usually they tell me, well, maybe it's because of the pseudotumor or maybe it's because of the hydrocephalus. And often it's never because of that. I get the runaround with the doctors on a daily basis. I just went to the eye doctor on yesterday and they said the thickness behind my eyes is getting thicker, and they don't know why. And so they're like, well, we'll send the reviews to the neurologist. But the neurologist just took me off the medicine. So it's like a constant back and forth between every doctor. And I can say that over the last 10 years, if it isn't people like you, Dr. Urban, that have these type of testings on a daily to find out what's wrong, I wouldn't be halfway as good as I am now. I mean, it's frustrating not being able to smell on a daily basis. And since I lost it in 2019, most people are like, okay, is it from COVID? And it's like, no, it's not. But at the same time, it's nothing that I can do. But I say all of that to say to you, ma'am, who was asking, well, what do you do? I may not know the answer, but I can say push it as far as you can, because you have people like me on a daily basis that I really don't know what's all wrong with me. But I pretty much go through this concept of like, well, we're going to go to the doctor. I'm going to go to 10 different visits a year, and we're going to get different answers, but none of them are going to be true. So hopefully whatever funding it is that you guys can get, it continues. And we thank you, because it's very frustrating. And she knows all the time. I'm like, I hate going to the doctor because they don't know what's wrong with me, but they're like, oh, it's going to get better. But how does something get better when it's like it's constantly getting worse?
Thank you for sharing that perspective. Thank you so much. Ms. Upshaw, do you still have a comment? Okay.
Because so much, excuse me, so much has been said, and I've heard keywords, advocacy, power, awareness, change, and all these are very big keywords, and it just triggered so much in my mind. And when I was diagnosed with cancer, and I told my story earlier, and one of the things that I came to terms with, that I had to be an advocate, not just for myself, but for others. And and going out into the community is just so awesome. When you came to me and thanked me for that, I said, I have to do what I have. I have to do this. I have to be an advocate. I have to try to educate my people. I have to try to do what I can. And I just want to say, for those of us who have been fortunate enough to survive cancer, who have participated in clinical trials, we have to. When we were eating a little while ago, I said we have to get to a point where we're just not talking about it, but we're doing it. I mean, as an individual, it's good for me to come to these things and share my story, but what am I doing? And so I guess I'm kind of putting out maybe a challenge. I don't know what to call it, but be an advocate for somebody. Offer to go to I can't tell you how many people I've went to appointments with because they were afraid. They didn't know what questions to ask, and they just needed somebody that had some kind of knowledge to go with them. And I have no problem with doing that. So if you can be in that position, then do that, because what's the saying? It takes a village, and we're part of the village. And so if it takes the village, and it means just taking some time off, I've taken time off from work, take a vacation day, and if that's what I have to do to be there with somebody, to hold their hands and to help them maneuver and go through it, then that's what it'll be. So I don't know. Maybe I'm issuing a challenge to those of you out there.
That is awesome, and that is a great challenge. Thank you very much, Ms. Upshaw. I think you will all agree. We have question, no? I think everyone would agree with me that this has been an amazing conversation, really genuine and fluid. Thank you very much, Dr. Urban, Dr. Ophilie, Ms. Johnson. Thank you so much. I appreciate you, and we look forward to continuing to having this conversation. And to the community members, thank you all for staying, those online and in person. We will be making calls out, because now that we are starting this clinical trial initiative at TSU, we would be starting a community advisory board, right? Because again, we can't do it, without each and every one of you. Back to the concept Dr. Urban said earlier, we need to turn it around and make it community back to the bench top. So thank you, panelists. We do appreciate you. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I would like to invite up Dr. Monica Laleye to please give us a closing remark for this session. Thank you, Dr. Ho.
I just want to reiterate what she said. Thank you so much, Dr. Ophilie, Dr. Auburn, Dr. Johnson. Thank you so much for everything. We really look forward to what will come out of this partnership with EQB Med. Thank you for leading the charge. Thank you for advocating for us, pushing for us, and we will not disappoint you. Thank you to our guests, our partners. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, everyone. We truly appreciate you. Greetings from our president, Dr. Sayers, as well as Vice President Dr. Penn Marshall, our provost, Dr. Carl Goodman. Greetings from them. We truly appreciate this. We will make this happen by God's grace at TSU, and we will, move the needle here and be a model, like Dr. Ophili said, to the entire country. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Ajewale, for your leadership and your team. Thank you, Dr. Poon, Dr. Ogbo. Thank you so much. Thank you to our students, alumni that came back. So proud of you guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you around. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am certain that you have received a lot of great information regarding clinical research participation. I hope we have been able to answer your questions. And please, if you have further questions, feel free to send those to us, and continue to follow us on all our social media at CECTX Southern U. And we want to say a big thank you to the founder of our program, to our sponsors, to our exhibitors, to all our volunteers, to all the staff members, to the faculty and the leadership of Texas Southern University. Thank you so much for supporting our program today, and most importantly, to each of you, our community members. Thank you for joining us in person and online. You have made today's program a success. We want to be sure that today's program just does not end here, so continue to engage with us on our social media platforms